I was raised in New Brunswick in Highland Park. I was born of immigrant parents from Hungary. I was raised half Hungarian, half English, and I used to have this big accent. Then I went to River High School. I talked like River High School. But fortunately, when I got to Rutgers, Rutgers was still a private university at that time. You couldn't graduate. You could graduate, but they wouldn't give you a diploma until you could write and speak perfectly. Graduated in history, political science, and economics. But while I was matriculating for 4.5 years, I spent as much time as I could auditing engineering courses. Since I had been deferred from the draft, I went to the Perth Amboy, New Jersey draft board and told them, okay, I'm done, take me. And they did most happily. Now in those days, you acquired a 6-year military obligation in the draft, not 2 or 3 or anything like that. There must be others in the world, but I'm the only one I know of that was drafted by 2 separate presidents. Eisenhower greeted me in April of '56. John Kennedy greeted me in May of '61, and I was discharged in '62. And I got a medal. It was a good conduct medal, but it was by a vote of 5-4. But I was a member of the Los Angeles Electric Club and a member of the Rutgers Club of Los Angeles, and we found out that a naval officer from Rutgers was going to surface at the North Pole and plant a flag from a submarine. The Aggies were down at the South Pole. They were going to put a Rutgers flag up. And they said, let's put the Rutgers flag in the rest of the mountains of the world. I said, okay, I'll do that. I went around the world in Australia and Japan and India and every place and put Rutgers flags on tops of the mountains. It took 8 months. This is pretty interesting because the 2 Japanese guys strung the flags on the ice axe. Well, they put the Japanese flag on top. Well, there's a colonel at Rutgers who was backing us on this thing. And I said, he'll kill me if the Japanese flag is on the top, if I hold the thing up. So when they got ready to take the picture, I held it this way, which put the American flag in the middle. And the day was saved, you see. But I Xeroxed a couple of copies. Some of the signatures in here, here's Ed Hillary, and there's Tenzing Norgay. These are the 2 Japanese climbers that climbed with me on Fuji. I wound up going to 78 countries of the world in my career, and I made quite a name for myself. My friends all over the world put me up. I go to Melbourne, I go to Sydney, I get put up. Like Tokyo, it's very unusual to be sleeping in a Japanese home in Tokyo. They offer me the Western bed, but I take the tatami just to show them I'm made of sterner stuff. I used to play baseball a lot, that is hardball. In high school, I was a track captain. I ran a half-mile track. I wasn't a good enough baseball player, but I improved. In fact, in California, when I played in California, they gave me a trophy for the most improved player. Famous Bill Millsaps, who later became executive editor of the paper, wrote a story on me because I learned how to pitch in slow pitch, a pitch that nobody could hit for a home run. Now normally, if you step towards the plate, and a lot of guys will step back and pitch because they're afraid of the ball, but I used to be an infielder, so I wasn't afraid of the pitch. So some guys will pitch like this. Aha! To get closer to the plate, I had to practice this endlessly. You take a great long stride, a second stride, and let the ball go just before your foot hit the ground. Well, that collapsed the parabola from this parabola to this parabola and moved the ball that 1/4 of an inch, and nobody could hit home runs. It was incredible. When I met Ed Hillary in New Zealand the first time, he sent me up Mount Victoria. At the top of Mount Victoria was a monument to Admiral Richard E. Byrd of Virginia. I had a picture taken by that monument in 1967. In 1991, I went back to a medical conference, and the place was a mess. It was all graffitied, and Chiquita Banana was using it for promotion. So I took the limousine to the Prime Minister's office and waved my arms around to the Vice Prime Minister of New Zealand. And he said, if you raise half the money, we'll raise half and we'll rebuild your monument for you. So I did. I raised half the money mainly by selling tapes of Admiral Byrd's 1929, 1931 stay in the South Pole, including the Flight of Stars and Stripes. I raised $30,000. One of our rallies was at the Virginia Aviation Museum, and the staff had never seen pictures of the Stars and Stripes fly. And so, boy, they crowded in and saw this thing. I think one of the most interesting things was a consequence of the tragedy that my wife developed breast cancer in 1986. When 2002 2000 came along. Our 25th anniversary was going to be 2003. 2002, I'm sorry. In 2000, they discovered that the breast cancer, which had been operated on, irradiated, and they slashed, burned, and poisoned, reached her liver. And 2 oncologists in Richmond said she was going to die in the year 2001. And I said, this cannot be, because I had promised everybody to take her to Paris for our 25th wedding anniversary and have a large dinner. So I went to Massey Cancer Center and I sought out the best guy. They said she's going to die next year, 2001. You got to make it so I can take her to Paris, April 2002. Send her in, he said. So I sent her in and he examined her, all of her records, x-rays and all. Then he called me, and he was a bit of an actor. He said, sit down, John. He said, well, I've looked at the progress of this thing, shaking his head. He said, John, you book it, I'll keep her alive. And he did. He kept her alive to 1 more year past that. We had a great dinner in Paris with my French friends, with my English friends, and people flew up from Florida. My kids surprised me. It was really great, most satisfying. Barbara was an outstanding secretary herself. She worked for the executives of the Department of Mental Health, Mental Retardation, Substance Abuse, the top executives. And when she died, they turned out 100 people came to her funeral. She was also a great singer. She sang in Carnegie Hall and Kennedy Center when we were up in New Jersey, and in the governor's mansion down here with the Richmond Choral Society. And I miss her terribly, and I haven't been able to replace her in 5 years. In the year 2004, I answered a knock on the door, and there was a man and a wife and 3 kids. And they said, we hear you're living here alone. Do you want to sell your house? And I looked at them, and they were me and my wife and our 3 kids 25 years ago. And I said, oh yeah. And we sold it, no real estate agent on either side, and I moved to this house, which I built. I built this entire house except for the shell. Electrical, of course, the plumbing, made a few mistakes. And now we have a lakefront place here with a motorboat, a rowboat, and a sailboat. I still ride a motorcycle. If you're bored, adopt a project. Make trouble for yourself so you never ever get bored. And that's been the philosophy of my life.